I never thought I'd find myself in this situation. My name is Jake, and I'm a 34-year-old guy who's been happily married to my wife, Lisa, for nearly 7 years. At least that's what I thought. We met in college, and our relationship quickly blossomed into a beautiful partnership. We supported each other through thick and thin, and after years of trying, we finally had our daughter, Mia, through a surrogate named Sarah. But something changed in Lisa after Mia was born. At first it was subtle. She seemed a little more distracted, her laughter less frequent. Then came the late nights at work and sudden girls' nights that I never remembered hearing about before. I tried to shake off the nagging feelings. After all, we had just become parents and I knew that came with a lot of stress. But as time went on, those little signs turned into glaring red flags. One Friday evening, I got home from work early, looking forward to a quiet family dinner. I noticed Lisa's car was parked in the driveway, but the house was eerily silent. I called out, expecting to hear Mia giggling or Lisa bustling around, but there was nothing. I walked through the house, and when I reached our bedroom, I found the door slightly ajar. Curious, I peeked inside. To my shock, I saw Lisa on the bed with her phone, a sly smile creeping across her face, and it wasn't the kind of smile you give your husband after a long day. It was a flirtatious, mischievous grin that sent a chill down my spine. My heart raced. I had this sinking feeling that something was off, but I still held on to hope. Maybe it was just a harmless conversation. I quickly retreated and decided to make myself a drink, hopping to shake off the dread creeping in. But deep down, I knew that I had to find out what was going on. The turning point came the following week when I noticed Lisa was getting a bit too comfortable with Sarah, our surrogate. They were texting each other almost daily, and Lisa had started going out to help Sarah with her errands. The real revelation hit when I stumbled upon a series of messages on Lisa's phone while she was in the shower. I couldn't believe my eyes. The texts were filled with flirty emojis and inside jokes that left no room for doubt she was having an affair. And the kicker, it was with Sarah's husband, Mark, the very man who had supported our journey to parenthood, the man I had shared beers with, trusted like a brother. After that discovery, my world collapsed. I felt betrayed, angry, and utterly heartbroken. It felt like I was living in a whirlwind of emotions. One moment I was furious, ready to confront her, and the next I was just sad, thinking about Mia and how this would affect her life. I knew I had to talk to Lisa, but I was terrified of what that conversation would look like. But I couldn't let it fester. I had to confront her. I had to hear her lies, see her excuses. So I waited for her to come home, my heart pounding in my chest, a storm brewing inside me. When Lisa walked through the door, she seemed cheerful, completely unaware of the chaos that awaited her. "Hey babe, how was your day?" she chirped, tossing her bag on the couch. "Can we talk?" I said, my voice flat. I could see the moment her smile faded, replaced by a flicker of confusion. "About what?" she asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. "About you and Mark," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You can drop the act, I know everything." The look on her face was a mix of shock and guilt, but it didn't take long for her to pivot into defense mode. She was quick to deny any wrongdoing, claiming it was all in my head. "You're being ridiculous, Jake. Mark and I are just friends." But I wasn't falling for it anymore. The lies piled up and I could hardly keep track. Each excuse was more ludicrous than the last, and with every denial the anger simmered hotter within me. As the confrontation wore on, I felt a mix of rage and despair. Lisa, the woman I trusted, was fabricating a reality I could no longer recognize. I wondered how long she'd been lying to me, how much of our life together had been a facade. The emotional impact of that evening lingered long after Lisa stormed out, leaving me with more questions than answers. I was still reeling from the betrayal, grappling with feelings of betrayal, anger, and sadness. I couldn't help but think about Mia. How could I protect her from the fallout of this mess? But in the back of my mind, a new sense of determination started to form. I couldn't just sit back and let this happen to my family. No, I would not be a victim in this story. I had to think of a plan, a way to not only address this betrayal but also to reclaim my life, my family, and my daughter. Little did Lisa know, things were about to change drastically. The days that followed that explosive confrontation felt like walking through a thick fog. I was still grappling with the emotional fallout, torn between the love I had for Lisa and the undeniable betrayal that weighed heavily on my heart. Each time I looked at Mia, my sweet little girl, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I had to find a way to navigate this mess without destroying her innocence. Lisa was behaving as if nothing had happened. She put on a facade, acting as though everything was normal. It was infuriating. She'd come home with a smile asking how Mia's day was, while I felt the rage bubbling just below my surface. I wanted to scream, to confront her with the truth, but I had to bide my time. I needed a plan. I decided to start gathering evidence. I knew I couldn't confront her again without something to back me up, something concrete that would make it impossible for her to squirm out of accountability. So I began keeping track of her schedule, nodding when she left for errands and when she received messages from Mark. I even enlisted the help of a friend, Tom, who worked in tech and could help me monitor her phone discreetly. As the days turned into weeks, I felt myself slipping into a dark place. I was angry, hurt, and betrayed, but I was also determined. Each evening, after putting Mia to bed, I'd sit at the dining room table, poring over my notes, feeling like a detective on a case rather than a husband on the verge of a breakdown. One day, I caught a break. Lisa mentioned to me that she was going to meet with Sarah for coffee one afternoon. I knew this was a golden opportunity, so I planned my own outing, telling her I was going to run some errands. Instead, I parked a few blocks away from the cafe where Lisa was supposed to meet Sarah. I sat in my car, heart racing as I waited. About 30 minutes in, I saw them. Lisa sat across from Sarah, her laughter ringing out like nails on a chalkboard. But it wasn't just the two of them. Mark appeared, joining them at the table. I felt a surge of anger as I watched them interact, lips curling into smiles that looked far too intimate. I snapped a few pictures from a distance, capturing the trio sharing anecdotes and laughter while I sat there, feeling like a ghost haunting the scene. Suddenly, I felt sick. I couldn't sit there and watch them any longer. I drove home feeling a mix of rage and despair. How could she betray me like this? How could I have been so blind? I had evidence now. I had the pictures, the text messages, the lies. With this newfound determination, I decided to escalate my plan. I would confront her again, but this time I would come prepared. I would not let her twist the narrative or deflect blame. I needed to take control of the situation, not only for myself but for Mia. The next evening I set the stage. I had the pictures printed out along with copies of the damning messages. I waited until Mia was asleep, my heart pounding as Lisa walked in, her face lit up by the glow of her phone. I steeled myself for the confrontation. "Lisa, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm. She looked up, feigning innocence. "About what now, Jake? I'm tired, can't this wait?" "No, it can't wait," I replied, placing the photographs on the table in front of her. "Look at these, look at what you've done." Her expression shifted from confusion to horror as she scanned the images. "Jake, I can explain." "Explain," I interrupted, my voice rising. "There's nothing to explain. You think I don't know what's been going on. You think I'm blind." "I was," she stammered, her words tumbling out in a jumbled mess. "It's not what you think." But I wasn't in the mood for her lies anymore. "I saw you with Mark. I saw the way you laughed with him, the way you touched him, all those lies. You've been sneaking around behind my back while I've been at home with our daughter." Lisa's defenses crumbled, and for the first time I saw a flicker of genuine remorse in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she said, her voice trembling. "We were just friends, and then it just happened." "Just happened?" I echoed, incredulous. "You're telling me you fell into bed with Sarah's husband just because?" "I was lonely, Jake. You were always working late, and I felt abandoned." She shot back, the anger in her voice rising to match mine. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was placing the blame on me. I shook my head in disbelief. "You think that's an excuse? You think that justifies cheating on me?" Her eyes filled with tears, and suddenly it felt like I was looking at a stranger. This wasn't the woman I married, the woman I had built a life with. "I'm so sorry," she begged, her voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I was confused. I made a terrible mistake." "You're right, you did," I said, my voice trembling. "And I won't be part of your excuses anymore. I can't trust you and I don't think I ever can again." With that, I walked away, leaving her in a cloud of her own guilt and shame. As I lay in bed that night, my thoughts raced. I realized something fundamental. I deserved better than this. I wasn't just going to let her betrayal define my life. I had Mia to think about, and I needed to ensure she grew up with values that Lisa clearly didn't provide. With a newfound sense of clarity, I began to think about what I wanted moving forward. I had to take control of my life, to show Mia what strength looked like, even in the face of betrayal. I wouldn't let Lisa's choices dictate the course of my future. I would find a way to raise our daughter with the values I believed in, values that celebrated honesty, loyalty, and integrity. This was my turning point, my moment to reclaim my life. After the confrontation with Lisa, I felt a mix of relief and heartbreak. It was as if a weight had been lifted, but the void of betrayal left a gaping hole in my chest. I spent the next few days in a daze, my mind racing with thoughts of what to do next. I couldn't just stay in this limbo. I needed to make a decision, a definitive choice about our future. I focused on Mia amidst all this chaos. She was my anchor, the light in my darkened world. I poured my love into her, dedicating my time to ensure she felt secure and cherished. I took her to the park, played games with her, and read her bedtime stories. Each smile she gave me was a reminder of what was truly important. It was vital that I didn't let my emotional turmoil affect her happiness. Meanwhile, Lisa was walking a tightrope between guilt and defiance. She seemed desperate to reconcile, always hovering around me, trying to engage in conversations about our marriage as if nothing had changed. I could tell she was trying to play the emotional card, and while a part of me still loved her, I could no longer see her as the woman I once knew. Trust was gone, shattered into a million pieces, and it wasn't something I felt would be easy to rebuild. One evening, I decided it was time to put my thoughts into action. I reached out to a lawyer, seeking advice on separation and custody arrangements. I knew it was a big step, but I had to think about Mia's future. I needed to protect her from the fallout of Lisa's choices. The lawyer was helpful, explaining my options clearly and reassuring me that I was doing the right thing. The thought of going down this path was daunting, but I also felt a sense of empowerment. When I returned home that night, I found Lisa sitting at the kitchen table, her phone in hand, scrolling idly. She looked up as I walked in. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Busy," I replied, keeping my tone even. I wasn't ready to reveal my plans just yet. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice slightly trembling. "About what?" I asked, leaning against the counter and crossing my arms. "About us," she said, her eyes searching mine. "I want to fix things, Jake. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Her words hit me like a freight train, and I could see the desperation in her eyes. I wanted to believe her, to have faith that we could somehow salvage what we once had, but I couldn't ignore the reality of what she had done. "Lisa, you need to understand that it's not just about wanting to fix things. Trust isn't something you can just rebuild overnight," I stated firmly, my heart racing as I prepared for what I had to say next. "I've been talking to a lawyer." Her expression shifted from hope to shock and then to anger. "A lawyer? Are you serious? You're just going to throw away our marriage?" "Throw it away," I echoed, feeling the heat rising in my chest. "You threw it away when you decided to cheat on me. This isn't just about you. I need to think about Mia and what's best for her." "You don't mean that," she said, her voice rising. "You're just hurt and you want to retaliate." "It's not retaliation, Lisa. This is about protecting my daughter from the chaos your choices have created," I replied, feeling the pressure building. "I can't let Mia grow up in a home where her mother's infidelity is the norm. That's not the kind of values I want her to learn." For a moment, silence enveloped the room, thick and heavy. Lisa's eyes brimmed with tears, and I could see the pain etched on her face. "I'm sorry, Jake. I never wanted to hurt you. I was confused and lost," she said, her voice breaking. "I know you're sorry," I said, my voice softening for a moment. "But sorry doesn't change what happened. I can't forget what you did. I need time to think about what this means for us." Her face crumpled as she began to sob. "I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose our family." "But you've already jeopardized that," I replied, feeling an ache in my chest. "Right now, I need space to process all of this." Over the next few days, things became increasingly tense. Lisa would often try to initiate conversations about our relationship, but I remained distant, focused on Mia and my own thoughts. I couldn't help but notice the toll this was taking on Lisa. She seemed to be struggling with the reality of the situation. Her once vibrant smile was replaced with a deep frown, and her eyes lost their spark. Finally, after a week of uncertainty, I made a decision. I would not wait indefinitely for Lisa to figure things out. I owed it to myself and Mia to be proactive. A few days later, I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer to discuss custody arrangements in detail. I wanted to ensure that when the time came, I would be ready to fight for what was best for my daughter. Mia's well-being was my top priority, and I knew that if I did not act decisively, I could lose my chance to provide her with the loving, stable environment she deserved. I was prepared to take the necessary steps to ensure that Lisa understood the gravity of the situation and that I would not back down from my resolve. When I returned home from the lawyer's office, I felt a renewed sense of strength. I found Lisa in the living room, sitting on the couch, her expression vacant. "Jake, can we talk?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sure," I said, steeling myself for whatever she was about to say. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. I want to make this right. I want to be a better wife and mother. I just need you to give me a chance," she pleaded, her eyes searching mine for hope. "Lisa, I've already been to see a lawyer," I said, my voice steady. "I'm taking steps to protect Mia, and I can't let you play with our lives anymore." Her face fell, and I could see the realization hit her like a brick wall. "You're serious? You're really going to do this?" "Yes, I am," I replied firmly. "I love Mia too much to let this situation spiral out of control." The tension between us was palpable, and I knew that this was the moment of truth. I didn't want to hurt her, but I also knew that my decision was for the best. I had to stand strong, not just for myself, but for my daughter as well. As Lisa's tears fell, I felt a mix of sadness and resolution. This was going to be a long, difficult road, but I wouldn't let her betrayal define our family's future. I would raise Mia with love and values that would shape her into the person I knew she could be, regardless of the chaos surrounding us. It was time to take the reins of my life and do what was necessary to protect my child. The days turned into weeks, and I began to feel a sense of purpose that I hadn't anticipated. After deciding to engage a lawyer, I found myself digging into the practicalities of separation and custody arrangements. It was daunting, but with every step I took, I felt a little more in control. I was determined to create a safe and loving environment for Mia, one that would shield her from the turmoil Lisa had introduced into our lives. As much as I focused on Mia, Lisa's attempts to reconcile didn't stop. She would frequently approach me with pleas, trying to express remorse and her desire to change. Some days I could see genuine regret in her eyes. On others, it felt like she was simply trying to manipulate the situation, hoping I would relent. It was confusing and exhausting. One evening, after Mia had gone to bed, Lisa sat across from me at the kitchen table, her hands clasped nervously. "Jake, can we talk about our future?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I tried to keep my expression neutral. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what are we going to do? You can't just throw away everything we've built together," she replied, her tone desperate. "Everything we've built together," I echoed, feeling anger rise within me. "You've shattered that foundation with your choices. I can't just ignore what you did." "I know. I know I messed up, but I want to fix this. I want to go to couples counseling. I want to work on our marriage," she pleaded, tears brimming in her eyes. I sat back in my chair, staring at her, trying to digest her words. Part of me wanted to believe in the possibility of reconciliation, but another part screamed at me about trust and betrayal. "You can't just say you want to fix things. You've hurt me in a way that's not easily forgiven," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Please, Jake, I'll do anything," she insisted, her voice breaking. "I love you and I want our family back." "I don't know if that's possible, Lisa," I replied, feeling the weight of the decision ahead of me. "I'm not ready to jump back into this without knowing if it's truly sincere." The conversation felt like it was going in circles, and I knew I needed to establish boundaries. "I think it's best if we keep some distance for now," I said firmly. "I need time to think, for both of us." Her face fell and she nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I felt a pang of sympathy, but I quickly pushed it aside. I had to stay strong. Over the next few weeks, I continued to meet with my lawyer, finalizing plans for custody arrangements and separation. I learned more about my rights as a father and what it would take for me to gain full custody of Mia. It was both empowering and frightening. I felt like I was preparing for battle, and in many ways I was. One day, Mia and I were at the park, enjoying a beautiful sunny afternoon. As we played on the swings, I looked at her and felt a surge of love. She was my priority, and it was my duty to create a stable home for her. I couldn't allow Lisa's actions to define the course of her life. I wanted her to grow up knowing she was loved and cherished. As we were leaving the park, I spotted Lisa walking toward us. My heart sank. I hadn't seen her out in public in weeks, and I wasn't sure how I was going to handle this encounter. "Hey, Mia," Lisa called, her voice brightening as she approached. "I'm so glad to see you." Mia ran to her, wrapping her arms around her mother's waist. "Mommy, look at me, I can swing so high." I stood back, my feelings a mix of frustration and sadness as I watched them interact. Lisa knelt down, engaging with Mia, and for a moment it was as if nothing had changed, but I knew better. I had seen the other side of her, the betrayal, the deceit, and it was hard to reconcile that with the motherly affection she was showing now. "Hey, Jake," Lisa said, finally looking up at me. "I wanted to talk to you." "About what?" replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "I want to be more involved in Mia's life, and I think we should talk about co-parenting," she suggested, an earnest look in her eyes. "Co-parenting? You mean after everything that's happened?" I asked, disbelief washing over me. "Jake, I love our daughter. I want to be there for her. I don't want to lose her," she pleaded, her voice filled with an urgency that tugged at my heart. "I appreciate that, Lisa, but you need to understand that trust is gone. You need to prove you can be a responsible parent before we can talk about co-parenting," I said, trying to maintain my resolve. "Just give me a chance. I'll show you I can change," she insisted. "I'll do whatever it takes to be a good mother." "I hope you mean that," I replied, feeling a flicker of hope but also a wave of skepticism. "But it's going to take more than words to rebuild what you've broken." We exchanged a few more pleasantries, but the conversation left me feeling unsettled. I didn't want to let my guard down, but I also couldn't ignore the bond that Mia shared with her mother. This was going to be a difficult journey, filled with emotional complexity. That night, as I tucked Mia into bed, I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread that hung over me. I had one final meeting with my lawyer scheduled for the next day, where we would discuss the next steps in the custody process. I needed to make sure I was prepared to protect Mia and provide her with the stability she deserved. After reading her a bedtime story, I sat on the edge of her bed, brushing a stray hair from her forehead. "Mia, I love you so much," I said softly, my voice breaking slightly. "No matter what happens, you're my #1 priority." "I love you too, Daddy," she replied, her eyes drooping as sleep began to take over. "Are you and Mommy going to be okay?" I hesitated, searching for the right words. "We're working on it, sweetheart. Just know that no matter what, you'll always have both of us who love you." As I turned off the light and closed the door, I felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility wash over me. I would do everything in my power to protect Mia and raise her with the values she deserved. I wouldn't let Lisa's choices define our future. We were going to find a way through this, and I was determined to emerge stronger on the other side. The next phase of this journey was looming, and I had to be ready for whatever came next. The next morning, I woke up feeling a mixture of anxiety and determination. Today was my final meeting with my lawyer, where we would finalize the details of the custody arrangements. I knew I needed to be prepared for anything. After whatever had transpired with Lisa in the park, I felt like the ground beneath my feet was unstable. I had to remain focused and steadfast. As I drove to the lawyer's office, my mind raced with thoughts of Mia. I kept replaying the memories of her laughter, her little quirks, and the love we shared. I couldn't let that be jeopardized by Lisa's choices. I wanted to ensure Mia was surrounded by love and stability, and I was ready to fight for that. When I arrived, I was greeted by my lawyer, Sarah, who was a no-nonsense professional. She was efficient and knowledgeable, which I appreciated, especially during such a tumultuous time. We sat down in her office and she began outlining the next steps. "Jake, I believe it's in your best interest to file for primary custody," she said, looking at me seriously. "Given Lisa's infidelity and the emotional impact it has had on both you and your daughter, you have a strong case." I nodded, absorbing her words. "What does that entail?" "Essentially, it means you'll be seeking legal recognition as the primary caretaker, which would involve demonstrating that you can provide a stable environment for Mia," Sarah explained. "We'll need to prepare documentation regarding your work, your living situation, and any evidence of Lisa's questionable judgment." I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of fear and resolve. "Let's do it. I want to protect Mia." "Good. I'll start drafting the necessary paperwork," she said, jotting down notes. "But remember, it will take time. The court process can be lengthy, and there may be some resistance from Lisa." I nodded again, knowing that Lisa wouldn't take this news lightly, but at this point I couldn't let her emotional turmoil dictate my actions. I needed to stay the course. As our meeting wrapped up, I felt a sense of accomplishment. I was taking proactive steps to secure a better future for Mia, and that gave me a sense of hope. But I also felt a twinge of uncertainty about what the confrontation with Lisa would entail once she learned about my decision. When I returned home, Lisa was already there, sitting at the kitchen table, her expression unreadable. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, attempting to keep her tone casual. I took a deep breath, knowing I had to be direct. "I met with my lawyer. I'm pursuing primary custody of Mia." Her reaction was immediate. Her eyes widened in disbelief and her mouth dropped open slightly. "You can't be serious, Jake." "I am serious, Lisa. I need to protect her. After everything that's happened, I can't let Mia be subjected to this instability," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You're overreacting. I'm her mother. I've been trying to do better," she protested, her voice rising with each word. "I understand that. You want to be involved, but you've lost that trust," I said firmly. "This isn't just about you anymore. It's about what's best for Mia." "Best for Mia? You think taking her away from her mother is what's best for her?" She shot back, her frustration boiling over. "It's not about taking her away, Lisa. It's about ensuring she has a stable environment," I countered. "You need to show that you can be the mother she deserves first." Face flushed with anger, and I could see she was struggling to keep her composure. "You're being selfish," she spat, her words laced with venom. "You're letting this whole situation go to your head." "I'm not being selfish. I'm being a responsible parent," I replied, my voice steady. "You can't just expect everything to go back to normal after what you did." "Fine. If that's how you feel, then maybe I shouldn't be part of your perfect little life," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with emotion. I felt a pang of sadness at her words, but at the same time, I knew this was necessary. "I'm not trying to exclude you. But this isn't going to work if we can't communicate honestly and openly," I said firmly. As she walked away from me, her shoulders slumped in defeat, I felt both relieved and heartbroken. This was a battle, and I had to remain strong for Mia. I wouldn't allow Lisa's emotional outbursts to deter me from my goals. Over the next few days, the tension in the house was palpable. Lisa continued her attempts to reach out, often initiating conversations about our past, trying to elicit sympathy or play the victim. But I remained focused, keeping my interactions about Mia and maintaining firm boundaries. One night, after putting Mia to bed, I found myself sitting alone in the living room, overwhelmed with emotions. I flipped through old photo albums, reminiscing about the happier times we shared as a family. The memories tugged at my heartstrings, reminding me of the love that once filled our home. But as I gazed at those pictures, I also reminded myself that love wasn't enough to rebuild a shattered trust. I had to prioritize Mia's well-being above all else. I couldn't afford to let nostalgia cloud my judgment. A few days later, the court date arrived. My heart raced as I walked into the courtroom, a wave of anxiety washing over me. I had prepared myself for this moment, but standing in front of the judge made it feel all too real. I could sense Lisa's presence, her tension palpable, and I braced myself for the battle ahead. When my name was called, I stood up and approached the stand, feeling the weight of the situation bearing down on me. I took a deep breath, remembering my purpose. I was here to fight for Mia's future, to ensure she would be raised in an environment filled with love, trust, and integrity. As I recounted the events that led to my decision, I found my voice steady. I spoke about my commitment to Mia, the steps I had taken to provide stability, and the emotional toll Lisa's actions had taken on both of us. With each word, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. When it was Lisa's turn to speak, I braced myself for her response. I knew she would likely try to play the victim, but I was prepared for her narrative. She presented her side of the story, complete with emotional pleas and vows of reform, but I could see through her facade. The judge listened intently, and as the proceedings continued, I felt a mix of hope and apprehension. I was fighting not just for myself, but for Mia's future, one that I intended to protect fiercely. As we left the courtroom that day, I felt a wave of uncertainty wash over me. The next steps were out of my hands, but one thing was clear. I was committed to standing strong for my daughter, no matter what came next. I would navigate this storm, and I would find a way to ensure that Mia would emerge from this ordeal with the love and values she deserved. The days following the court hearing felt like a whirlwind. I was filled with anticipation, anxiety, and a flicker of hope that the judge would see what I had been fighting for. Lisa and I continued to have tense interactions, her attempts to reconnect often met with my guarded responses. I could sense her frustration growing, but I had made my choice. Several weeks later, I received the call from my lawyer with the results of the hearing. My heart raced as I picked up the phone, my palms sweaty. I had been dreading this moment and hoping for the best. "Jake, the judge ruled in your favor for primary custody," Sarah said, her voice calm but filled with excitement. "You've demonstrated that you can provide a stable environment for Mia." A flood of relief washed over me and tears prickled at the corners of my eyes. "Really? Are you serious?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Yes. You'll have full custody and Lisa will have visitation rights, but it will be structured," she explained. "You did an excellent job presenting your case." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. This was a monumental victory for Mia, and I couldn't help but feel proud of the steps I had taken to protect her. I thanked Sarah and hung up, excitement bubbling within me. But there was still a part of me that felt a pang of sadness for Lisa. As much as I had endured, she was still Mia's mother, and this was a reality she would have to face. I couldn't ignore the fact that the choices she made would significantly impact her relationship with our daughter. Later that evening, I sat down with Mia, who was busy coloring at the table. I watched her, my heart swelling with love. "Mia, I have some news I want to share with you," I said gently. She looked up, her big brown eyes sparkling with curiosity. "What is it, Daddy?" "I'm going to be taking care of you a lot more now," I explained, trying to keep my tone positive. "We'll get to spend even more time together." Her face lit up. "Really? Yay, can we go to the park tomorrow?" "You bet. We can have a picnic and everything," I said, feeling a wave of joy wash over me. As the evening wore on, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had led me here. I had fought for Mia, and in doing so had found a sense of strength I never knew I possessed. I was determined to raise her with the values I held dear: honesty, loyalty, and love. Meanwhile, Lisa was still a looming presence in my life. I knew she would want to discuss the new arrangements. I braced myself for the conversation, preparing for whatever might come next. When I saw her a few days later, the tension was palpable. She walked into the living room and I could see she had been crying. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. "Sure," I replied, my heart pounding. I gestured for her to sit down, trying to remain neutral. "I heard about the court ruling," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't expect it to go this way." "I know you didn't," I said, feeling both sadness and resolve. "But I had to think about Mia's well-being." "I'm so ashamed of what I did," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted to hurt you or her. I was lost and I made terrible choices." "I understand that, but this is the consequence of those choices," I said gently, trying to balance my compassion with the reality of the situation. "You need to show that you can be a responsible mother from here on out." "I want to be better, Jake. I'll do whatever it takes," she pleaded, sincerity shining through her vulnerability. "I hope you mean that," I replied, my heart aching for her. "But it's going to take time and effort. Mia needs consistency and you need to prove you can put her first. Lisa nodded, her expression filled with a mix of despair and determination. I'll do better, I promise. As she spoke, I felt a flicker of hope for her. Maybe this was a turning point for her as well. I wanted to believe that people could change, and if Lisa could truly commit to being a better mother, perhaps there was a possibility for some form of co-parenting in the future. The months that followed were a mixture of challenges and growth. Lisa started attending therapy, and she made genuine attempts to reconnect with Mia during her visitation times. It wasn't always easy. There were still moments of tension and miscommunication, but I kept my focus on what was best for our daughter. Mia blossomed in her new environment. She thrived on the stability we had created, and I couldn't have been prouder of her. I found ways to instill the values I wanted to impart: honesty, kindness, and resilience. I made it a point to show her that love was about being there for one another, especially during tough times. As for Lisa and me, we found a way to communicate about Mia's needs, setting aside our past grievances for her sake. It was a work in progress, and I learned to navigate the complexities of co-parenting, always with Mia's best interests at heart. In the end, this entire experience transformed me. I discovered strength I didn't know I had, and I developed a new understanding of resilience. Life wasn't going to be perfect, but together with Mia, I was determined to create a loving, supportive environment for her to grow up in. I learned that love isn't always about the absence of conflict. Sometimes, it's about how we rise above it. I had emerged from the storm, stronger and more committed than ever to being the father Mia needed. I held on to the hope that one day, Lisa and I could share a respectful co-parenting relationship, united by our love for our daughter. As I watched Mia play, her laughter ringing through the house, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought us here. I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, fortified by the love of my daughter and the lessons I had learned along the way.